Hi, welcome. My name is Rachel, and today I'm coming to you from my home office slash craft room in Hamilton, Ontario. And today I want to talk about one of my goals for this year, calendar year of 2026, which is to significantly reduce the size of my yarn stash. I picked up knitting in 2018, so 8 years ago now, and over the years I've spent a good amount of time experimenting with different yarns, seeing what I like to use, what I like to wear, and really honing in on my personal preferences. But what that means is that I've also accumulated a lot of yarn, and I've done a significant amount of downsizing over the past 2 years, and now I'd like to make a concerted effort to truly minimize my stash. I want to quickly address that it seems like kind of a trope in the yarn knitting fiber world to kind of like bemoan the size of your stash. And I'm not coming to this from that perspective, but I have a few reasons that I do want to like be a little bit intentional about what I'm using and the way that I use my yarn over the coming year. So I'll talk about those a little bit later. In order to feel like I'm actually making progress, I did need this to be quantifiable. So I did something which I've been avoiding doing forever, which is cataloging my entire yarn stash. I made a spreadsheet, which I'll show you in a bit. And I also wanted to convert this into a unit of measurement that I could easily visualize, which I decided would be 100 gram skeins. I got this idea from Retro Claude on YouTube. She's done a whole stash busting series for a while now. But it's a good idea. It's a good way to like quantify it. So I'll talk more about the math of it all in a little bit, but I basically have 100 skeins of yarn to start with. And I would like to get to the equivalent of 75 skeins at the end of the year. Anything I buy is added to the inventory. Anything I use is taken out of the inventory. And I'm doing this by month. I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I want to save money. Tracking the yarn I buy will, I hope, make me just inherently more reluctant to pick up things impulsively, just like because I can. I have a few big expenses this year, and I just want to give myself a little bit of extra breathing room. And I also have lots of yarn to use for projects, so anything extra that I'm getting right now is like kind of just for funsies, you know what I'm saying? I want to be more intentional about what I bring home because I have a fairly limited amount of space. This is a 180 square foot room. And I'll show you like a little clip of my craft area in a bit, but I have lots of different hobbies and I want to make both physical space and like brain space for hobbies other than knitting. And I also have a huge recency bias towards what yarn I like to use, and I like to buy yarn as a souvenir or at festivals, or like if I find some good vintage wool at a thrift store. So like I want to be able to pick stuff up, get something special when the mood strikes me without having to ask like, where am I going to put this in here? Where is this even physically going to go? Another reason is I have ADHD / also relatedly moth prevention. As I mentioned, I have a real recency bias towards yarn and I really crave novelty. So if I have yarn sitting around for too long, my brain starts to think of it as stale. Don't ask me to explain it. It's also really easy for me to just like straight up forget about stuff. And that feels like a really good way to get yourself moths. Moths love to like make little babies inside something that's forgotten in a dark corner. It's been shoved there for a couple of years. And unfortunately, I feel like that's something that will happen if I don't have my knitting stuff in sight, like basically at all times. Another thing is I have no feeling of scarcity about yarn. I live in a mid-sized city, close to a major city, and I can count like 3 different places I could go buy yarn probably right now if I really felt like it. I also like to buy yarn at festivals when I can, or as a souvenir if I see something special while I'm on vacation, and I'm always checking the craft section at the thrift store or like a vintage store for, some interesting wool. So like it's not hard for me to find yarn. It's not like I live in a rural area where I would have to order my yarn in, which like maybe if I was doing that, I would place larger orders to hit free shipping minimums, but like that's just not the case for me. If I wanted to knit a sweater and get a sweater's quantity today, I could go get it today. The last reason is that it feels like a fun creative exercise. My creative juices really flow when I have a problem that I need to solve. So right now I'm working through my full skeins and garment quantities of things, but at some point I'm gonna end up with a lot of scraps and other remnants to figure out what to do with. And I love that. I thankfully also like the look of loud, scrappy projects. So I'm looking forward to doing that later this year and getting some real problem solving on. So all of this feels very doable and very attainable to me for those reasons. Let's get more into the nitty gritty, like the math of it all. To be clear, I started on this like a few months ago because I knew it would take me forever to catalog all my yarn, and it did. As I was doing this, I also cleared some stuff out to donate because I had to ask myself, do I actually feel like weighing this and putting it in a spreadsheet? If the answer was no, I put it in a bag to donate. I also had some stuff that I wanted to keep but is like kind of in hibernation at the moment, and I decided to just not catalog it for now. Once I've made a significant reduction in current inventory, I'm gonna like reassess whether I even want the other things, or maybe those will also get donated. I'm not sure yet. So it's not a complete list, but that's really okay. I'm thinking of it as like this inventory, this is my list of what I'm working on right now. And rather satisfyingly, I ended up with just over the equivalent of 100 skeins of yarn. I think it's more like 102 and a half, but let's just say 100. So the goal of 75% of the current size just seemed to make sense to me. It feels doable, especially given that this is a net number. So I'm interested to see if I could get to less than that by December. Like maybe I make 50 or 60 a stretch goal, but I'm gonna have to see how that shakes out. I'm not certain how doable that is just yet. We'll see. So once I cataloged all my yarn, I made it into a proper spreadsheet, which I'll show you in a little clip now. So this is my yarn inventory spreadsheet. It is really and truly nothing fancy. The first tab in the spreadsheet, we have 3 tabs down at the bottom here. And the first one is just a basic inventory table. I have it listed by brand, and I usually sort by brand by default, just because that makes sense to my brain. And then we have the name of the yarn. So we got Cascade as the brand, and then Magnum as the name of the yarn. And then the color. And here sometimes I have the tags, and so I put what the tag says in here, but sometimes like this one I've had forever. I've lost the tag forever ago. We're not getting the tag back. I just put blue and I know what that means. The weight is super bulky. Number of grams, 70. And then the project name is the legume toe. So that is if we are assigned to a project. So I know that I don't have everything I own in here, but at some point I got bored. This is not interesting work. I'm going to be really, really honest. This was the least fun part of this project, but it does give me a very satisfying total number at the bottom. And that is currently, like at this moment in time, what my total inventory is. So next tab over here is projects. And again, really nothing fancy. I'm trying to keep this so simple. So we see that I already have January finished, and these were all the projects I did in January. My total used was about 9 skeins, 9 100-gram skeins. So this was my starting inventory. It was just over 100, and total out is from this number here. Total into inventory, I did forget to add a couple small skeins into my inventory. So I had to put them out into the inventory to take them back out. They did actually get used, I think. Anyway, so that was my closing inventory, but then the number in my closing inventory was different from what was actually on the spreadsheet. So somewhere along the way, I made some kind of mistake. I had to make an adjustment, and like, that's fine. That's probably what's going to happen because, as I've said, it's an incomplete list and I'm probably going to have to like swap things out and in, whatever. This is just for fun, but I did want the actual closing number to be at the bottom here so that I could then use it as the starting inventory number in February. February is ongoing as I'm recording this. So I've completed one project on February 1st. I made a little Edie bonnet. It's really cute. I'm still weaving it in the ends though. And that used 167 grams of yarn. So that's my out of inventory. And this is my closing inventory right now, which we can see matches the bottom of the inventory here. And then I just have this populated for March. I think I might separate these by quarter. I haven't really decided yet. And then the very last tab it's the least fancy. I might build this out further, but for right now, I'm not
like doing very much with it because I'm not buying yarn, but this is into inventory. And these are both yarns that got used in projects, but then I forgot to add them to the inventory. So I had to add them in to then take them out. Don't worry too much about it. But I only brought 200 grams in for January. And as I've said, I'll probably continue to build this out because I'm also ripping apart some finished objects for new yarn or to harvest their yarn, I guess. And I've also, like, again, I have some yarn that I just knew that I didn't feel like adding in. It's kind of at the bottom of the pile of what I want to use, but as I go through my top choices, I do want to force myself to use that other yarn. So anyway, I'll have to add that in at some point. But for right now, this is my spreadsheet. And, this was like the least interesting part of this whole project, but it really, really is quite satisfying to watch that number go down at the end of the month, to do my final count and then go, oh, like this, I can actually see what I've done. I can quantify what I've made over the course of a month. There are a couple things from December 31st in there because they were things that were in my scrap sweater that I realized, like just a few bits and bobs that I forgot to include. Anyway, don't worry about it. This is a work in progress. We are not doing retail inventory here. This is for fun. This is for our hobby. All right, back to the rest of the video.
Okay, you're back. So to kickstart this, I decided that I won't be buying any yarn until March this year. I made it through January and I was tempted a couple times when my local yarn store had like snow day sales, but I held fast to my resolution because I felt like it was important. There is a local yarn and fiber market that happens here in like mid-March, last third week of March, something like that. And I do plan on buying some yarn from there because one of my goals this year is to make a Fair Isle sweater. And I think it would be nice to get like a very sheepy farm yarn in a natural color for the base color. I feel like between the Fiber Forge, that's the market in March, and then like late May, early June, I'm going to go to Halifax, and there's a couple places there that I really want to check out for yarn. And then in September, I'm going to go to Newfoundland. So I feel like those are opportunities for me to buy things that are actually very interesting and like more truly satisfying to redirect my budget towards rather than like dropping 30 bucks impulsively at Michael's or whatever. As I've mentioned, I will be bringing some yarn into inventory by harvesting yarn from old finished objects. I will open myself up to the potential of buying yarn later in the year because at some point I probably will run into the issue of having to buy yarn to like tie a scrap project together. But for right now, I'm using what I have. And I think because I have this quantifying goal, I'm actually having some fun getting through it. Right now I'm working on this, just a moment. Right now I'm working on this cotton shirt. It's the Sport Tee from Park Williams, and I bought this yarn to make this shirt back in the summer, but 100% cotton yarn does tend to be a little bit hard on my hands, and I kind of just didn't get around to it. The yarn is Lion Brand 24/7 cotton in navy, which I don't know how well my camera, the light is not awesome today, but this is navy. That's the name of the color, but I think of it more as like a royal blue, I think. I'm knitting this at a pretty tight gauge, and the fabric feels like kind of stiff, but in a way that I personally find comforting, like in the way that like workwear feels very sturdy, if you know what I mean. And this is an example of something that I really just needed an extra push to use this yarn. I knew that I wanted this shirt in this yarn, but because it's a 100% cotton knitted garment, I had a bit of a block about it, potentially hurting my hands and flaring up an old injury, but honestly, it's fine. And I have other projects happening. So when I notice like a little twinge from this, I just like put it down and go do something else. Just because it's here as well, actually. I also have my little Edie bonnet, which was 2 fingering weight yarns held together with a thread of this sparkle yarn. I wonder how well you can really see it. So for this, I used Skein Study, I think Deluxe Sock in the color Koi Pond, held with naturally dyed goldenrod and indigo yarn. That is this like bright yellow and green, and I really love it. I also held it with some, I think it's called Make It Bloomchen. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But it's these teeny tiny, it's a sparkle thread, and these teeny tiny little flower shaped sparkles, which I do kind of feel like makes this more delicate, but it's really cute. I have to match a stitch on the straps as well. Anyway, one of my strategies for using up a bunch of yarn is holding things double, especially fingering weight yarns double. I also made a pair of DK weight socks recently and I love them. So those were just 2 strands of the same fingering weight sock yarn held together. And then I think I'd also like to play around with some marling next, so holding 2 strands of differently colored yarns. Another strategy I have is what I like to call my nightstand project. Where did it go? This is a blanket I'm working on, made entirely out of fingering weight yarn scraps. I'm going to talk about this more in the future. But whenever I have like a very small amount of fingering weight yarn left over from something that goes with this wild color palette, it's going to go in here. I also have 2 scrap sweaters I'd like to make this year. So this is one I made last year and it's really cozy, really comfy. This one was made by holding 2 different strands of fingering weight yarns together. And then at various times I switch one strand out for another one. And it makes this beautiful, fuzzy, muted, scrappy, like TV static situation. I wear this quite a lot, like at least once a week. And I'd like to make another one like that, maybe a different basic pattern, but this time with neutral earthy tones. I'm already collecting some scraps for those. And then another scrap sweater I want to make is actually going to be a Fair Isle sweater, which I mentioned earlier. I'd really like to buy a natural yarn as the base color, and in my heart of hearts, I'd love for it to be a warm charcoal, but like I'll see what I can get. I have a bunch of multicolor worsted weight yarn remnants that I'm collecting and continuing to collect. So at some point that will probably turn into a version of the Strange Brew by Tin Can Knits. I also have a secondary goal of getting my yarn and knitting storage in order just a little bit better. I have 2 sets of drawers that are vaguely organized by weight and yarn type, like animal versus plant fibers, but they could be better. I also have one of those drawers that's just like a chaos void area and it like stresses me out. So I filmed a little clip of my yarn and hobby storage area over here, which is the neater of the 2 areas, which I'm going to show you now. Okay, I'm sitting on the floor in the middle of my 180 square foot home office slash craft room. So I'm going to show you the neater of my 2 craft corners. Starting at the end here, I have a painting that I've yet to finish. And then I have this wooden bookshelf, which the top shelf is art and reference books and some zines and other things that I want to refer to. And then the bottom shelf is all collage material. Coming over in the corner, I have a little stack of masks in this corner shelf, as well as old candles and some cleaning spray and other bits and bobs. The milk crates over here mostly are like work and art related. So I have some of my movement related textbooks on the bottom and then some art books and other things on the top. This little caddy here is like things I want to fix. So at the very top are some jeans that I just noticed have kind of a hole in the butt, like the other day. So I got to fix those. Okay, moving along. At the bottom, these are my 2 little plastic storage drawers. I'm so annoyed that that drawer is open right now, but we're just going to live with it. And these are like not really organized. I just have stuff shoved into them. They're organized a little bit, but I would like to go through them in the future and make it better. They're vaguely organized by weight. Moving up top here, we have some more milk crate shelves. In the various bags and baskets are current projects, current things I'm working or ideating on. And then I have some Caron cakes that I'm going to make a blanket with eventually. I think I want to get one more. Look at what's up top. I have some art supplies, various art supplies in various containers, mending yarn, cotton swabs, Sharpies. I have this chalkware thing that I need to fix it. This little bit broke, so I need to super glue that. I really want to close this drawer now. So this is most of my active craft storage. I have another area that's like hibernating stuff that's way messier. And I would like for pretty much all of my yarn craft stuff to live in this area here.
Up until actually fairly recently, this was even more like bursting at the seams, and I downsized quite a lot, and I've made a point of using quite a lot. I think I could do a little bit more, and I would love to get these drawers a little bit better organized. So maybe that's a future project.
Hi again. In that clip, I didn't show you my closet over here, which is honestly kind of a nightmare right now. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still like a little bit of a situation where I shove stuff into tote bags and then I shove the tote bags into the closet and then I pile them all up one on top of another. And I know I have some fun craft materials in there that I could be using, but it's such a pain in the butt to like get at them that that's a barrier to me to use them. In the past few years, I feel like I've really grown into and embraced my crafty hobbies, which has been really fun and fulfilling. However, I'm also right now feeling like this room has just like 20% too much stuff in it because this is also where I work at my desk. I'm sitting at my desk right now. I look at a computer. I find it challenging to work when my space feels chaotic. And I also really benefit from being able to see my stuff, easily access it, get inspired. So we'll see how that goal progresses as I reduce the amount of yarn and other stuff in here. I find it beneficial to just like focus on one thing at a time. So at some point in a couple of months, I'll probably do like a declutter or organization of this closet over here. That. But for right now, I'm just sticking to one thing, which is using my yarn. So if you stuck around to the end, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to tell me about any stash yarn goals you have, or like, let's flip the script on that. Maybe you want to build your stash in a more intentional way so that it feels joyful and inspiring rather than like kind of a chore. If you want to see my progress, I'm going to film another video at the end of February, and that'll be more of a knitting project update, but I'll include my February numbers in that. So I'll see you then. But in the meantime, if you'd like to find me, I'm on Instagram at Rachel Smiley. It's just my name with an underscore on either side. And I post about craft stuff. I also post about movement teaching that I do. And I post a lot of pictures of my senior dog. Okay, I hope you're having a nice day or night or whatever time it is when you're watching this. And I'll see you soon. Bye.